Welcome to Healing Your Family Legacy, here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Innovative, evidence-based recovery that helps to identify intergenerational trauma, allowing for freedom and embracement of the healing process. Today, episode 84, Relationships and Recovery, Part 3. And now your host, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
This is Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, helping you heal your family legacy. Welcome back. Last week, I was talking about being in relationship with someone that is not in recovery and how to go about doing that so that you don't lose your mind, but also so that you don't drive them crazy and perhaps drive them away. And what I focused on then was the importance of boundaries. And whenever you are feeling a lot of distress in a relationship and nothing has happened in terms of nobody's beat you up, nobody's gone out and had an affair or anything like that. It's just that you're feeling a lot of distress because that person you're with isn't doing what you want them to or what you think they should do. And when you're feeling that way, it's important to think about what I call the B word, boundaries. That's the time when you look at yourself and you say, if I'm really in a lot of distress and that person over there doesn't seem to be upset by anything that's happening here, or they're like saying things like you're being controlling or you're trying to manage me or, things like that, then you need to stop and say, oh, I am now in boundary failure. Boundary failure in a relationship is one of the most common issues that, I work with when people are talking about, oh, we have a communication issue. Okay, that means that there's a total lack of boundaries. Someone else is usually, and one person is trying to control the other one or trying to make the other one behave in a way that suits them better. Now, I am a big proponent of asking for changes in behavior. So you always have a right to say, gee, I would really like it if you would go in the other room when you're reading because I want to watch the tennis match. And I can't watch it because you need to have mute on and I would like to hear the tennis go on, right? You can ask for that behavior. It's quite manageable, all right? And because it is possible for someone to get up, take their book, and go to another room so that you can watch the tennis match. Or you can say, I'd really like it if you would call me and let me know if you're going to be more than 15 minutes late. A person can do that. It's a simple change of behavior. And I always, this is an assumption, but I always make the assumption that if you can't do that for me, then there's something deeper wrong in the relationship. Because I'm not asking you for a change of personality. Now, let's say you don't like, how the other person, let's say you don't like the way they breathe when they are sleeping. Okay? Because maybe they breathe really deep, not in a snoring way, but in a deep way. And it bothers you. Maybe it wakes you up, maybe, but it's their breathing, okay? So you say, I really wish that you would breathe differently when you sleep. Oh, am I snoring? No, you're not snoring. You just breathe deep. Well, what's a person going to do about that? Okay? It's not something you can just oh, sure, I'll breathe differently. But you can also, that's an area that you could talk about and say, well, I don't know what that breathing is. It seems really deep. Would you talk to the doctor and see, and if it all ends up that it's just the way I breathe, then it's on you to figure out a way to manage that for yourself. And sometimes, it's just a situation where you can say, well, if I get to sleep first, there are ways to problem solve that. There are things that cannot be changed. Let's say, I don't like the way that you laugh. It's like, okay, most people laugh the way that they laugh. And if that is the issue of the day, then you need to look at yourself and say, what is going on with me that this person's way of laughing makes me mad or troubles me? I need to look at that myself and get back over on my side of the street. Now, those are simple, relatively simple, because we're talking about being in recovery for your childhood trauma. And, childhood trauma impacts the way that you grow up. It impacts the way that your brain develops. It impacts almost everything that you do, say, and are in the world. And so you need to stay on your side. If you are in recovery, then you might even be able to see your partner behaving in a way or feeling a way that is based on their childhood trauma. Unless you have an agreement initially that you're allowed to point out those situations, then you just need to be quiet and pay attention to yourself. A boundary for most people is all about being quiet. Okay? Or not doing something. So, if I see that you are on the phone with your mother, who was part of the trauma that you experienced as a child, and you can see that the person is turning into a wounded child, and they're starting to feel sad, and they're starting to feel less than, and they may be even crying, and you see that they're talking to one of their parents on the phone, then you just need to be quiet. And when they get off the phone, you can say, is there any way I can support you? And that's about as much as you can say. Otherwise, you be quiet. It's called a boundary. It isn't your business unless they ask you to have it be their business. Okay? And that's true for relationships, primary relationships. It's also true for your family of origin. You might be the one in your family of origin that's in recovery for the childhood trauma. And if you listened to this podcast last year when I was talking about the impact of childhood trauma and how that works in your life when you're growing up, then you might recall that I said more than once, if it happened to you, it happened to all of you. Okay? Even, let's say you got beat, but no one else in the family, none of the other siblings got beat. They were also feeling the same feelings that you were. They were afraid. They were, probably more terrified than you, because at least if it's you, you're at least feeling like maybe I can run away, maybe I can fight back, I'll go into another space in my head, whatever it is you're doing. And they're over there powerless, scared, trying to figure out what's going on. They feel betrayed by their parent. They also feel betrayed by you because they think it's your fault, because that's the only way they can survive. And so, it happened to them as well. And on top of all that, for your siblings, they feel guilty. They have survivor guilt. And so, with all the shame, the fear, the sadness, the terror, they're also feeling survivor guilt. You don't have that. Okay? And survivor guilt is almost immobilizing for people. They want to stay away. They want to stay away. Somebody that has survivor guilt wants to avoid any reference to that situation. And so if you're the one in recovery, you might find out that your siblings want less to do with you now than they ever did before. And before, if you're the one that had most of the trauma, you might have noticed that they want very little to do with you anyway. Because they want to stay away. They don't even understand it. They just want to stay away from that, anything that reminds them or triggers them into that horrible experience. And so, I've said before, and I'll say it again, that when you are in recovery from your childhood trauma and you still have surviving family members, if you stay in recovery, and most of that has to do with having boundaries, because when you have boundaries, you can also have some compassion for everyone else. You start having compassion, you have boundaries. Let's say you show up at, Thanksgiving dinner. Now, people will be happy to, oh, I'm so happy to see you. How are you doing? How's blah, blah, your kids and all of that. But they are if they're not in recovery, you'll notice that they're in their wounded child, they're in their adapted adult child. Periodically, they can show up as an adult. Some of them may be drinking, some of them may be, like arguing or fighting, and you need to seriously have your boundaries. And that means that you be quiet about it. Unless somebody's coming after you, at which time you evaluate, okay, is this going to do me any good to say anything about what I'm seeing here? Or should I just leave? I've always told people, when you go back to your family of origin for any reason, you have to think about it as, I'm going back to the scene of the crime. And if I'm going back to the scene of the crime, do I really want to stay, sleep overnight, have it be my refuge where I'm going back to the scene of the crime and expecting that people are going to be aware of what I went through, talk about what I went through, talk about what happened in the family? Hell no. That is not what you're going to do. And those expectations are the expectations of a wounded child. If people see me, they'll help me. No, they won't. And so what you do is that you make sure you have a place to go if you have to leave. Let's say your sibling starts drinking and they're alcoholic and they start drinking and they get obnoxious and angry and, it's like, oh, gee, gotta go. Thanks for everything. And you go back to your hotel room. You make sure you have a place to stay. That's, maybe a friend's house, or I would always say a hotel or Airbnb or something where you can have refuge and you're out of the drama. And be aware that when you decide to leave, it's just a boundary. You're not saying, well, I'm leaving because you're all going crazy or because you're blah, blah, blah. It's not your business. Your business is to take care of you. And that means that if it starts getting wackadoodle there, you need to have your own transportation and you need to have your own place to stay so that you can go back there and do whatever it is that you do to take care of yourself. And, when most people go back to the scene of the crime, it's usually at the holidays, which, is like add 12 points onto the stress scale there. So it's already going to be stressful. You need to be aware inside. I am really and what it feels like is I am really upset now and I really need to correct these people. I need to point out their issues. No, you don't. It's called a boundary. Leave it alone. When I say leave it alone, they might be dying of their alcoholism. They might be in the worst relationship you've ever seen in your life. They might be trying to fix everybody else. They might be doing all these things and you're sitting over there watching it, and you might be thinking, well, if I can just go in there and point out that, this is all trauma responses, and then they'll get help. And it's like, you are walking yourself into sludge that you won't be able to get out of. And what will they say and do? They'll sit there and go, oh, now she or he thinks that she's better than everyone else. And isn't that special? And then they're going to come after you again. They don't get it. It is called the road less traveled because there aren't very many people you have to run into on that road. It is about self-care. And the best way to you want your goal when you're dealing with your spouse, your significant other, with your children, say your adult children that are out on their own now, your family of origin, anyone else, your goal should be just to have compassion for them, not to change them, not to try and intervene in their lives, but to have compassion. That's your goal, is to get past your judgment, get past your need to control or monitor or manage. It may, it most likely will be coming from a source of love and concern, and that's fine. Your love and concern for these people, you want them to be well. I get that. I understand that. Believe me. But it doesn't work. If it worked, I'd say, now go home at Thanksgiving and tell your sister that she drinks too much and she needs to be in recovery. And then she'll go off and do it. No, she won't. She'll get mad at you, and that will just give her extra reason to drink. Okay? You think back on what it was that made you determine that you needed to get into recovery. And it probably wasn't anyone from the external saying, gee, you're sick, you need to get into recovery. It was yourself. Is it your bottom? It was what happened to you. That is what got you into recovery. And that's what gets people into recovery. It's a rare bird that gets into recovery because someone that loves them says, gee, your depression or your anxiety or your post-traumatic stress or your drinking or your overeating or you're going out with 9,000 people expecting to find the right one that will fix you. It's like it's like all those things are about your childhood trauma. And if you would get in recovery for your childhood trauma, you'd feel better. I've never seen that work. But I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying that in all my life, I've never seen that work. And in fact, it usually makes the situation work. So, it really, and the boundaries aren't just about being quiet. I mean, that's the biggest one. But the boundaries are, I'm being quiet. I'm seeing what's going on. I'm hearing what's going on. I'm feeling sad about it. As soon as you're angry, you're going to go into boundary failure, okay? But if you're feeling sad and you're looking at your spouse or your family of origin and you're thinking, oh my God, those people are in so much pain. This is really hard for them. And you can also get into some gratitude about, I remember what it was like for me, and I really hope that they can find their way. And if I still need to stay here, I'll have some extra pie, or something to give yourself an opportunity to unhitch from the outcome of what you think it's going to be. And like I said, always have a way out. Now, if you're in a primary relationship, you can't be running out the door. Unless, of course, it's dangerous. If there's going to be violence erupt or something like that, yeah, you need to get out. You need to get out and call the police. But most of the time, it's about watching your spouse devolve into their childhood trauma. And, if it's too much for you, if it happens every day, all day long, okay, so maybe you could do an intervention, get someone else to do it, of course. But most of the time, you just need to say, I can't do this anymore. There are reasons for people to leave relationships. And if someone is always in their childhood trauma and impossible to deal with, and you can't have a conversation about, whether or not you're going to paint the room blue because they devolve into their childhood trauma, it's like, then we call those things irreconcilable differences now, I would say. You don't run to that, but you can certainly, recognize that, okay, we've tried 2 therapists that tried to help us. I'm trying to keep my boundaries, but I don't want to live in a green room. I want the blue room, and we can't have a conversation about that. Because every time we do, you start yelling at me about how I always get my way and how, when you never get your way. And I've looked at it and I realized that all of the rest of the house is green and I just wanted to have blue in my office or whatever. And we're having fights about it. It's like, yeah, I'm really not wanting to continue to live like that every day, where every time we have to make a decision, it ends up in a fight. Because, relationships are about negotiation and compromise. And if we can't do that, and we try over and over and over again, we have therapists and everybody else trying to help us, then we know that, okay, we've come to the end of the line. And, it's like what I have said to people who have tried for 10 years to try and work this out. I say, okay, well, you've spent a decade of your life, which is not a dress rehearsal, by the way. It's your life. You don't get those 10 years back. You don't get a redo on that. And so you either make a decision and recognize that this is what your life is going to be for the rest of your life, or you can say, 10 years, a decade of trying to work out issues in a relationship that will not budge, I'm going to go away and be on my way. Because this is not how I want to live the rest of my life. It is not how I want my children to observe how relationships go and to be able to, thinking that, well, this is just how relationships go and I'm either the one that, gets it all my way or I'm the one that's always feeling angry and depressed and sad and I don't get what I need or want. It's a tricky thing to be in recovery for your childhood trauma and to be in relationship with someone who's seriously injured by their childhood trauma but won't deal with it. Because their issues will show up. And they don't just go away magically. It's not a magic solution. It takes work. It takes courage. Only courageous and brave people are willing to turn around and look at their childhood trauma. If someone's in my office and I ask them, I always ask, okay, tell me about, who's your father? What's his name? What's his age? Did he have any addictions? Did he have any issues? And we go through it and I hear, oh no, it was all just fine. We had a lovely time. Then I'm thinking at the end of that part of the conversation, I'm thinking, you're either seriously deluded or you're lying or you don't know what's going on because you wouldn't be in this office unless you had some kind of trauma. People don't walk into a therapist's office, pay for therapy, and say, oh no, everything was just fine. We were just fine. Now, like I've said before, there is no such thing as a perfect childhood, and I don't even know what that looks like. And I would be thinking that if it's perfect, there's trauma in that, okay? Perfection isn't possible for human beings. And so if you think it was perfect, that's part of your trauma, because you're going to be in the rest of your life trying to find the perfect relationship, the perfect way to raise kids, the perfect way to be on the planet. And you'll end up with no fingernails because you'll be chewing them all off all the time. You'll be angry at everyone. It's like there will be, you'll be easier to light up than a match because no one's perfect. But what you want is that you want to be able to move through your life, feel capable, competent, have a sense of security about you, and to be able to feel like, okay, I can do this. I can manage this. I don't need to go find someone to do it for me, someone to fix me, someone to make me feel whole. No. And these days, I don't need to devolve into the world of conspiracies because reality doesn't make me happy. If your reality doesn't make you happy, look at your childhood trauma. Deal with that. So, my next podcast is going to be about dating. And until then, take a look, have a boundary, and realize your own expectations.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Healing Your Family Legacy here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. Healing Your Family Legacy is copyright 2022, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.